to the show. Today we're calling out the silent thieves in our day. Today the seats have turned, actually. I have Michael as a guest. We're actually gonna
Yes.
put him on the hot seat today, and we're gonna ask him about one of like the many reasons we just don't get anything done in our days. It's the time wasters. And then I would, sorry, Michael, I forgot to tell you, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm looking forward to talking about this as a guest today.
Yeah, I always enjoy the episodes where we actually change the tables because I really like sitting you there and asking you questions as a Gen Z, as a female, as a lot like as someone that doesn't have enough experience just like you do, because you've wrote a book about it, Time Bandit, and you know all about time management, you know all about time wasters. So we're here to like take all your knowledge about it.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying I'm old and I've lived through a lot of it. Huh? I've wasted a lot of time, and I've learned from it.
Yep. Well, before we start our show, we just want to say that this show is sponsored by Time Bandit. And what else, Michael? What do we usually say? I'm a new host
just
here.
go, just go to timebandit.io and check it out.
Yep, for sure. Okay, we're ready to start.
Yeah,
Time wasters.
yeah, yeah,
They sneak in, they stack up, and they leave you wondering what did I actually do in my day? What did I actually get done today?
yeah.
So
I think
what is
that's
the actually? Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's the worst feeling, right? That's the feeling. Time wasters do sneak in. I mean, and they come in weird ways. But at the end of the day, when you go, "Ugh, I didn't get that done, or I didn't get that done, or how many times have we said where did the time go? It's almost in all the movies and stuff like that. And that's sometimes that's a good feeling if you're out on vacation and you're just enjoying things. That's awesome. Time flies, right? But when you have a lot to do and you have priorities and things, and you go and you sit at the end of the day and you go, I didn't get done what I needed to get done, right? That's
Yes.
that's the bad feeling. That's where time wasters really affect us most.
Well, yeah. This episode is actually hitting way too close to home here. I think I need to be taking notes while we record because I'm living this time wasting nightmare.
Yes, I
Um,
have a case folder on Ream's time wasting. We've talked about it before, right? We've talked about social, we
Plenty of
talked about doom
times.
scrolling, we talked about all that stuff. And yeah, so ask
And
away.
and but just to let you know, I'm still gonna ask these questions again.
Okay. All right. Well,
Well,
I just put a post out there. It might have been a week or two ago. I forget. Time flew by. The Actually, that would probably be memory more so than time. But the what I tried to do, we've talked a lot about time wasters, but what I tried to do in that piece in particular was just put a cost. What does it cost you on certain time wasters? And I dropped it into the comments in LinkedIn. I'll put it on YouTube as well, but and you can download it. I just tried to say, okay, if this is a time waster that's consuming your time, what price are you paying for that, right?
mhm,
So,
mhm.
so
So what
hopefully
is
that's
the real
a little
cost of
different
time
context.
wasters?
What's that?
What is the real cost of time wasters?
Well, if you look at it holistically, I mean, if you think about an hour a day, let's say you spend an hour a day doom scrolling, or responding to unnecessary emails and things like that. An hour a day is 365 hours. That's 9 work weeks, right? I mean, think about that. 9 work weeks. I mean, you're talking over months that you've wasted doing something that is not giving you a return on your priorities, right? And
Mhm.
my suggestion is not that, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on. My suggestion is not that you stop scrolling in Instagram if that's your thing, or TikTok, or whatever it may be. My suggestion is you trade up, right? So instead of an hour, you do 20 minutes a day on Instagram, and then you get 40 minutes back to your day, right? And so if you can think about leveling up, right? So just level up your time when you think about these wasters and what they can do. Can you level up that time? You still give yourself the moderation capability to do whatever it is that's wasting your time, but level up that time so you don't have 9 weeks of wasted time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so true. It's very hard to like notice it when you're in it every day.
Mhm.
Specifically, like social media, just like the perfect example you just gave. Because, like, can you tell us what to do you look for to know that this is a problem? Like, just
Yep.
spending a lot of time on social media would like tell me that this is actually the problem, or how do I look for time, like the cost of the time
Yeah,
wasters?
yeah. Well, one simple way that you can start looking at it, if your phone is the culprit of some of those interruptions and time wasting, is screen time. Apple has an app in there that you can see your screen time, and it'll say how much time you spend in different things. That's one macro way to kind of think about it. But I really think what we started the conversation of today is the biggest thing is if you have those moments where you have some clarity and you say, where did the time go? I didn't get that done. I'm way behind. When you hear your inner voice saying these things, then I would take a pause and reflect on what did you do instead of that, right? What was the activity you were involved in that didn't allow you to get that thing done? And sometimes it may be, well, that was important too, and so you just need to figure out maybe it's a scheduling problem or something like that. But I think it's when you hear that inner dialogue that says, "Ugh, I didn't get that done," or "I'm way behind." Pause and think about why, instead of fixating on that you're behind, right? Because you are where you are now, so now you've got to kind of readjust things and get to work or get on whatever you were doing, clean the house, whatever it may be. But if you don't understand why you didn't get there in the first place, then you can't fix it.
That's very impressive. Well, let's relate it to business because
Yeah,
this is like one of our main, like this is what we do every day. How do you spot time wasters inside the business, like a team or a company level? And how do
yeah.
you stop it from becoming a culture problem? Like how to stop it immediately?
Yeah, yeah. So well, it rules where we work with active ops, and there's some tools that we can start inspecting the days and weeks of your team, right? And looking at productivity levels and where time is spent. So there's ways that you can kind of identify that. The wrong way to do it though is to go in and say we're watching every minute of your day. That's not how it works, but or it shouldn't work that way. But there are ways to measure activity and productivity in a way that says, okay, we can find improvements, we can find efficiency gains, because maybe it's an old application that just takes too long, and you find that people are sitting there, they click the submit button, but it's waiting and waiting, waiting, and believe it or not, those little waits add up, right? So it's about inspecting the application efficiency, the process efficiency, and then getting on with it to fix it, right? Don't just accept it, just figure out ways to improve it. And there's a lot of methodologies out there. There's tools, there's re-engineering, all kinds of stuff that we can do to improve team productivity. But it starts with understanding where the time's going, right? So
Okay, so
that's what I.
understand.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's just like we were talking about personal. You say, okay, I'm out of time. What put me in this? Why did I run out of time? Same thing in work for business leaders. Maybe their team is not productive enough because the manager keeps putting meetings in, right? And the meetings are. Does everybody need to attend those meetings? Is there an agenda to the meeting? Is there an outcome to the meeting? And so perhaps a team leader is in fact wasting a lot of their team's time for bad management styles or bad practices. And but the good thing about the pandemic was we all learned to communicate via Zoom. The bad thing about the pandemic is now there's Zoom meetings every minute if you choose to, and so I think it just makes you need to be hyper vigilant about, okay, I'm going to set up this meeting. Is this meeting necessary? And if it is, who are the necessary people to contribute to that meeting? And only invite those. Don't invite everybody because you feel like everybody needs to be on it. Just invite the people that are going to contribute to solve the problem, and then reduce the time. So I think I did a short on this a while back, and I'm happy to resurface it. But instead of 30-minute meetings, schedule 25-minute meetings. Instead of an hour meeting, schedule 50-minute meetings. And there's something magical in that happens. Is one, people speed up, and they still get the topic addressed in the shorter amount of time. Secondly, you're giving them a break, right? They need 5 minutes before they get on the next call, or 10 minutes after an hour, where it could just be mental health. It could be just they need to reset their thinking, right? Because the other thing that time wasters happen is when you're so engrossed in work and you just keep going and keep going, that work efficiency falls off, right? You have to take a pause. You have to take a mental break, and think about that in your personal life too. You cannot keep doing the same thing over for a long period of time without the degradation in capability there, right? So it becomes mind numbing. Is you hear that a lot, right? And it does. And so meetings can be shortened. People should or should not be in meetings and have an objective. What's the goal at the end of that meeting? So
Yeah. Well,
maybe a
I've
new
sat
answer than you
through
wanted.
I've sat through many meetings thinking this could have been an email. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the no agenda, no meeting rule with me throughout my
Yeah.
life. I need to read an agenda if you want me for a meeting,
Yeah.
because sometimes time wasters sneak in just in the form of a meeting, and
Yeah.
it looks in our schedule that it's too important, and this is what we should be doing, because it's not doom scrolling, it's not social media, it's a
Yeah.
business meeting.
Yeah.
But again, it's in disguise, that because it
Yeah.
is a time waster again.
Yeah, well, and here's something to think about, Reem, and I do this a lot, is when you wake up in the morning, whose agenda are you running, right? It needs to be yours. If you wake up and you're working on other people's agenda right from the start, then you've lost the day already, right? So you have to be in control of your agenda. So what does that mean? It may mean you get up 30 minutes earlier and you go for a walk because that's important to you. Whatever it is, but it has to be your agenda. I'm not saying that you ignore other people's needs or necessities as well in our jobs. I'm not saying that at all. But if you give yourself to other people's agenda, you've lost your day, right? You have to be in control of your agenda. And the one way to do that, I think, is your schedule, your calendar, right? You can decide where you need either breaks to do certain things, or you need, time at the end or before certain things, because guess what? We're going to perform better if we're prepared. But if you just go meeting to meeting to meeting at somebody else's meeting to somebody else's meeting, you're not really at your best at that point. So
Okay. Yeah.
so just think about when you wake up in your day, whose agenda are you
Agenda.
working? You're working.
Mind.
Yeah,
No, only
yeah,
mind.
yeah. And by the way, that doesn't mean we have to be selfish. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's
Yeah,
just a
yeah, yeah.
matter. Yeah, it's just a matter of you being the most effective Reem, right? So
Yeah, and being like in control of my day and what I need to get done, because if I get someone else's work done, I still have my tasks sitting and just waiting for
yeah,
me to get them done. So
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and
um
that's one of those trade ups too that we talked about earlier. I talked about the trade up of some of the time you have spent doom scrolling onto something else. Well, this could be a trade up as well, right? So
mhm.
maybe there's 20 minutes or 30 minutes there that you can spend with a spouse or a child or something else, right? So just look for those trade up opportunities, because you'll be more balanced, I guess. Balance is one of those words that I struggle with, because I think work-life balance, you're never going to have an equal part, right? And balance implies this kind of equal weight. I think work-life integration is better, because then you're talking about your agenda that works for you, as opposed to just being a slave to somebody else's agenda.
When you put it that way.
Yeah, I know that's kind of a harsh way. Yeah, yeah.
Well, what other common time wasters do you see in companies?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
Well, I think for individuals inside of companies, email. So we talked about doom scrolling of Instagram and TikTok, and we all know that that's about dopamine, right?
mhm,
That is about dopamine. Absolutely. But emailing is one of those things that's become a socially accepted busyness. But is it really? Right? Is it really? If you sit down and you spend an hour cleaning out your inbox, answering everybody's email, is that really productive? Probably not. Did an hour go by that you could have been using for something else? So we have to be selective about our email time, I think. And then the biggest one in business and just in personal is multitasking, right? So multitasking became this kind of it almost became, you're a hero if you can multitask, right? And sometimes we still applaud people that can do all these things. That, how is she a mother and a business person? Blah 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 blah. And that is admirable at a macro level. But multitasking at a hourly minute business you will lose 40% productivity. I mean, we've talked about it, I think, before, that if you get distracted, that's 20 minutes before your brain really gets back to what you were doing. So
mhm,
if you think about a 40% productivity hit, because you're choosing to go from you're doing some kind of work and you get an alert on Teams, or you get an email ping, and then you go over there and do that. And then you come back and you got to reset your brain about what you were doing. And so I think the consciousness about deep work is really important. Is if you're doing something, if you're doing, I know you're in marketing. So if you're doing an event planning, or you're doing a brochure, or planning a script for a video or something like that, the more distracted you are, the less you're gonna be good at that project. So just block the time and do it, and then you can get back to that alert and those other things, right? So,
Guilty.
yes,
Guilty. I'll have emails and Teams and three tabs open trying to do everything at once. So I'll
yeah.
take that.
The one interesting thing that I mean, I guess we could measure it somehow, but we don't. But I wonder how many people are doing three other things when they're on a meeting that they shouldn't be on. Right. So they've got their video going, but they're over here doing email, or maybe they're on their phone doing something, or maybe, it would be fascinating to get those statistics on the amount of minutes within a meeting that are used for other things except that meeting. Right. Which probably means, like you said, that meeting should have been an email, or maybe that meeting needed to be a 10-minute, hey, let's just catch up and refresh on this topic. And then everybody can get back to doing what they need to do. Right. So, but we don't think that way. We think in 30 to hour clips in business for some reason, and we just need to change that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I work with a big company, Humana, and I'm they're a customer of mine, and they have now shifted, and I love it. It's a little, my brain doesn't work that way, but it works for them. They don't start a meeting until 5 minutes after the hour, right? So now every meeting invite you get from them is 5 minutes after the hour, which is interesting because you see an invite on your calendar and it says 3 o'clock, and you think, oh, it's 3 o'clock, I'll get in on the call. Well, I actually given everybody 5 minutes because their last call may have ended at 3 o'clock. So now they've got 5 minutes. So I told you earlier, do 25 minutes versus 30 minutes. They put the 5 minutes on the front end of the meeting because it kind of forces everybody to have that break. But it's an interest. I think those little tactics work. And I think for email, if you find yourself just buried in it, create folders and rules in Outlook or Google that every time a customer email comes in, it goes into a customer folder. Internal goes into internal, and everything else goes into an inbox. Let's say those are the three categories. You have customers and internal and everything else. And then go to your customer one first because that's the most important one, right? And then your internal one, and then everybody else, right? It's
Okay.
little systems.
I've never tried categorizing my email. I need to try to do that
Yeah,
because it's
I
just
love it.
all.
I love it. And where I started was I just created folders and started moving things. And that actually became less productive because now I'm moving things in the folders. But if you set up a rule, you can do it in
Just
Microsoft
goes
Outlook,
in
you can do it in
automatically.
Google. It just goes there immediately. And then you train your brain to say, I'm going to go look in my customer file first because that's the people I want to respond to first, right? So,
Okay. Now let's talk about the one that became very common since remote working became the main thing. It's weak boundaries between
yeah.
work and life.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Because
Well,
I've answered work messages from the grocery store sometimes, or like I'm on my day off and I'm like answering something. Like,
yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, boundaries is a massive challenge for everybody because maybe answering that email in your grocery store is okay because maybe you had to run to the grocery store during office hours or something because you had to get it. So there's a combination of things that um, you that boundaries become blended, and they have become really blended, right? And I saw the face you made when I said work-life integration is better than work-life balance. I saw that. So but the reality is it has become more integrated. But when I think of boundaries, I think of boundaries that we talked about when I said when you get out of bed, whose agenda are you on? I think that's the really key element is that learning to say no or learning to not say yes to everything, if that makes sense, because that's the boundary that will give you more time back. And then depending on you and your mindset, whether you answer an email on a Saturday afternoon or not is something that you've got to decide that your personal values represent or not. And I'm not judging any of it, but where you do have control is saying yes all the time, and or the converse of that is being able to say no politely, right? And we talked about that with priority management. If you say yes to everything, then you're saying no to everything else. To yourself. I think it was Eisenhower that said, "If everything is urgent, nothing's important." Right? So you're washing out your day. So think about the opportunities where you say yes to something, and then it's cut you out of doing something else, right? That was more valuable to you. So that's, I think, where boundaries have to start playing, and it really comes down to, again, I'm not suggesting anybody be selfish. What I'm suggesting is you weigh things against one another. Should I be on this meeting, or should I be doing that marketing campaign? Whatever. And which one's more important, which one's more urgent, and spend your time on that. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, we got a comment here from Tony. He's saying, interesting that Humana add the minutes on the front end. I see a lot of companies make meetings 50 minutes at length.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when I first started noticing it, when they were sending invites to me, I thought, well, this is odd. So I asked about it, and they said it was a communication that went out, and they thought it would be helpful to, especially for Humana internal meetings, to drop that five minutes. And I asked, the last call I was on with a big group of people, I asked how are they adapting to it, and they overwhelmingly said it's great, it's fantastic. And I think now that what's really exciting about that for them is they're going to create a culture around that, right? So people know they're going to have 5 minutes to catch up, to get their maybe sometimes they were on this project and they got to get to this project and they need to pull up those files and stuff like that. So even that peace of mind is great. So I think whatever you decide to do is, if you can enforce, maybe the wrong word, if you can encourage compliance with it in a way that helps everybody, then it becomes really cool.
So build a culture out of it.
Yeah.
Impressive. Just a quick reminder, if anyone has a question or like a comment or anything, you can drop it in the chat and we can get it and we're going to answer it. Well, this gets us to I think this is the last one, 2 for 1, the procrastination and overthinking, the two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
I'll delay a decision because I'm not 100% sure, and then it just sits there. So guilty. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think they are related. Overthinking does lead to procrastination, but sometimes procrastination is just procrastination. And I will tell you this, usually the fear of getting that done is worse than ever doing it, right? Whatever it is. Most people think, oh, if it's a college student, oh, I got to write that paper. Oh, my goodness. And they just wear themselves out thinking how horrible it's going to be. And they awfulize this concept that it's just going to be a nightmare. But if they just got started, then once they get started, they're like, oh yeah, this isn't so bad. This isn't so bad. Oh, it's an interesting topic. And then they just get going, right? And people do that all the time. They awfulize things, and that leads to procrastination, and there's a couple of things to do. So if it's a big thing, break it down and start doing it. So when I had a conversation not too long ago that somebody kept telling me they hate doing dishes. They hate them. They hate it. They live by themselves and they just hate washing dishes. And they kept going on about it. And I was thinking, well, we all wash dishes. It's all part of our lives, right? Well, it should be, because we don't want to eat on dirty dishes. But if you think about that, I said, well, why do you pile them up? And they were like, well, I just, when I finish eating, I put it in the sink and then they pile up. I'm like, well, why do that? Why not rinse it and put it in the dishwasher right away? And then you don't come back and you see a plate in the sink, right? And it sounds like a simple thing and it sounds kind of easy, but for whatever reason, we create these problems for ourselves. And that's just a kind of a metaphor for other things that we do. We think about it, right? We're making it sound so awful. Oh, I don't want to do that. But is really running a dish under the water and putting it in a dishwasher difficult? No. And it's not going to change your schedule, right? But piling up dishes might change your schedule down the road. So think about procrastination, and that if that's a good visual for you to think about from a cue perspective, if there's a project that you have to do, just start. Even if it's just a little amount right now, a little bit next, a little bit next, a little bit next. And before you know it, you're going to be 60% into it and you're going to be able to finish it like that. Overthinking is a different problem. Overthinking is, it's not a different problem, but it's of the same mind that we're unsure. And some people, when they're unsure, can't move forward, right? And so what you want to do there is kind of break it down. And what are you sure about? And if you're sure about that, can you get going? And we see this in business all the time. In the technology world, there's something called a POC, or a pilot, right? And that's one of the most overthinking things that a result to overthinking, right? There's a CFO and there's a big project and gosh, that's major transformation. Let's just try it out. And, and they try it out in a small group. If it goes well, then they expand, right? So what did they just do? They took a massive thing that they were thinking about and they de-risked it and started talking about just what can we do that's reasonable and we can prove out whether that's good or not. Right. And so in your own personal life, you may be able to do that as well. Maybe it's, I know you're a runner, right? Let's say that you are always running 10Ks and now you decide, you know what, I want to do a marathon. And you now, so what do? Instead of running a marathon tomorrow, you change your training routine where you get stronger to do it. And then before long, you're either going to decide, I like being a marathoner, or I didn't like it. I like 10Ks. I'm going back to that. And that's okay either way, but at least you broke it down in a way that didn't feel overwhelming. So that's, both of them have an extreme cost, because when you do those, when you delay choices that way, sometimes that choice becomes even harder to make because the problem becomes bigger. And the only way out of that is kind of through it. So if it becomes a big problem, I see this with addiction stuff that I do on weekends, is they don't believe they can stop whatever it is, the behavior that they're doing. Well, if it gets to that point, then maybe you just need to change something, right? Mm-hmm. Then change a little more until you get there. And actually next week, I think we're talking to Jonathan Glass Huntsman, who started a company called Or Health, which is about moderation, right? Mm-hmm. Using, in its case, he's got a program that helps drinkers that want to stop drinking or moderate drinking. And so he has a program for that. And that's a great example of it, right? So if you're overthinking and you're procrastinating because it just feels overwhelming, then you just got to find something and just get started, right? And move in that direction, because living like that's not going to be the right way to do it, right?
Impressive. I'm going to make sure that I tune in next week.
I didn't mean to pitch next week, but it fit into that conversation.
No, we're going to mention it again at the end of the episode. Don't worry. I need to ask you a question because all the time wasters you've mentioned right now, they're like very bold in our face. That why do we ignore them? Like, why do you think leaders ignore time wasters until it's too late? Like, why do we keep having more meetings? What is the reason?
Yeah, well, some of it is chemical, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned on scrolling is a dopamine rush, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's how we get some dopamine fixes every now and then. And the same thing with meetings, right? So if they get a meeting and they invite a lot of people and they feel good about it, right? They've got a topic they enjoy, they're talking about it, they're in charge of a project, whatever it may be. So that helps them feel a certain way. So there is a chemical thing to it. And then there's there's the things where it just slips in, right? It just slips in and we just don't realize it. And until it's too late, right? And so we just have to I think with those, we just have to be self-aware. And I know that's an easy thing to say and not a hard thing to execute sometimes. But what I said earlier, if you think that you're having an issue with too much time on email or too much time on social media, just open up the app that's on the phone and just see what time you're doing. And then build a habit that is breaking a habit. You and I've talked about breaking habits, right? And you have to, once you know you're doing something that is wasting time, you have to give it a name and you have to address it head on, right? You have to replace it with something good, and you have to give it a name and really, really fight the urge to do it, right? And so that break a habit framework that you and I've talked about before, you just need to think about that. When it becomes a problem, then think about just breaking that habit. So replace it with something good. So if it's I talked earlier about Instagram. So if it's or any social media, let's say you want to cut your hour of Instagram scrolling a day to 20 minutes. Well, now you've got 40 minutes. What can we do that will still make you feel good? Could it be a walk? Could it be go take a family member to coffee? Whatever. Replace it with something that's still going to give you a different set of experiences, but still feel good about it, right? So Instagram and things like that are typically that we want to be social, right? Mm-hmm. That's why they're called social media. Well, what if you switch some of that time to actually being social with somebody, right? Mm-hmm. It could be very interesting. It's a better way of getting it. You're still getting your social kind of fix. It's just in different ways. And it's hard, but I do say, I was thinking about this the other day when you and I decided to do this session. And I've got a grandson and he's 1.5, almost 2 years old. It's June, he'll be 2 years old. And I watch him play. And I think a lot of humans, and I'm one of them, don't know how to play. Sometimes it's always serious. Everything we're doing is about, doing something. But I watch my grandson, if you put a particular toy in front of him and he's sitting there and he plays with it. and he loves it, and he's having a ball, and he's showing me and stuff like that. If somebody turned on a TV, what happens, right? He may look
I'm
over at the
excited.
TV, get
Hmm.
distracted, and now he's not doing something that was really fulfilling to him and me because we turned a TV on, and now we're sharing that time. So just think of your time in that way, right? As an infant, almost, if you have to, you can sit there and stare at that screen, or you can take your mom for coffee and have a chat, right? Things like that, right? And it's just those trade offs. Level up, just level up. Did that
Replace.
help, or that is that overwhelming?
It did. No, replacing. I need to write them all down and give me options to how can I replace these times that I'm wasting to do something that is going to benefit me, either building a bond with someone or like running or doing something that's just going to
Yeah.
be not going to be a time wasting.
Yeah, well, I think there's the two secret weapons for me personally
Hmm.
are one is just pause. I'm going to tell myself I'm going to give myself a pause. I'll step outside. I'll go somewhere. I'll change where I'm sitting or standing or whatever, and I'll just pause and just things kind of calm down at that point, and then you can figure out, okay, what's the most important thing that I need to go work on next, right? And the other one is walking for me. If I'm really stressed and I'm not doing something, and it sounds counterintuitive, instead of opening up that spreadsheet and doing that thing,
Hmm.
sometimes if I just go walk around the block, I'll come back and I'll knock out that spreadsheet and three other things, right? It's just that you just sometimes have to kind of, I guess it's almost like, did you try unplugging it, and plugging it back in? So maybe sometimes you just have to unplug yourself, and then you'll be recharged. So,
Slow living. Just pause, think, and then just plug
yeah.
it
Yeah, there's a
again.
lot of techniques too. There's box breathing and stuff like that. If you're really trying to change behavior, you may want to look into some of those things because they really can reset your mind. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's just breathe and just relax. Put the keyboard away, put the visual away, and just relax and then go back. Like that. That's why I like walking, right? I like walking because you're moving, but
Mhm.
you're still refreshing the mind, right? When you were looking at a screen, now you're looking at a tree, and it just kind of flushes that anxiety and gets you back to where you need to be. So
Okay. Um, Gets me to my next question. What is the one habit change you've seen make the biggest difference for busy CEOs? Because busy CEOs, they're meetings back to back. They're in culture that being busy is
yeah,
actually productive. So, what is one habit that they can change and like it's gonna make a big difference? It's a
yeah,
big question, is it?
it is a big question. I didn't know you were going to ask it either, so it's really big.
On the
I think
spot.
the first thing that comes to mind is the going back to what we were talking about. They don't say yes to everything, right?
Mhm.
They know there's limitations, and they they just have to. For the, I'm not talking about big decisions. They can't say yes to everything. Big decisions, right? You can't invest in everything. That's kind of a known thing. But they also make decisions in their day, right, where they don't say yes to everything, right? And they just and they have to minimize the choices in a way that allows them to be productive and get on with it. So there's an art to it. There's probably a science to it too. You could use your calendaring, and the biggest way they do it is they put an administrative assistant in front of you, right? So there's a filter before it even gets to them. But I think really successful people, they know that boundary question. I'll say they've mastered it. They're better at it, right? So I don't know if anybody actually masters it, but they just are better at it. What really scares me about all of the productivity hacks that are out there is when somebody puts in LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever, and they put, here are the 20 things you need to do every morning to be successful, to be a CEO. And that's not true, right?
Mhm.
That's just not true. There may be some things in there that you can use that would help you become a CEO, but doing 20 things where you're exhausted by 9 a.m. is not always the answer for everybody, right? It has to be a personal choice, and you have to know what's important and what's urgent for you. And when you can navigate that, that's when you're going to be successful.
Awesome. Tony again. Oh, thank you so much, Tony, for all the questions. He's asking you, Michael, given that many companies are global or have employees working in different time zones, scheduling lunch breaks or breaks in general sometimes can be tough. True. What are your thoughts on blocking time out on your weekly calendar?
Yeah. I think that's a great trick, and it's not a trick. It's a recommendation. I think time blocking is absolutely essential. There is time we need to do deep work, and Reem, you and I may have talked before about the Pomodoro technique, right?
Yes, Tony.
What I love about it is the way that I would tell Tony to use his calendar, right? There's a Pomodoro technique where you have 25 on and 5 off, right? And sometimes that only person that needs to be in that 25 minutes is you, is you doing whatever you need to do. And that little 25-minute block, you can probably get more done. And and using your calendar that way tells everybody else that time is taken. And they don't even have to know what it's taken for necessarily, but it's a project, it's something. And I think time blocking is underutilized in the corporate world. But I mean, if you look at some big high volume operations like a call center, time blocking becomes an essential part of business, right? So they look at their day. They need, Reem, you have a skill to answer this type of customer service call. Michael has a skill to answer this type of service call. And we're available because somebody may call, right? But what if, Reem, you need to upskill to be able to take another call? What they actually do is they block time. They call it learning time or diverted time or whatever it may be, and make sure you get that skill. So why don't we treat ourselves that way, right? Why don't we, if we can figure it out as a company at scale, there's 1,000 people and we need 500 of them to get this new skill because we have a new product we're launching, and they block the time and get that. Why wouldn't we do that for ourselves when we want to be more effective with our time? And I think that's a great question. It's a hard thing to do, what Tony asked, because what happens? You can block that time. Well, I loved when Microsoft came out with focus time. And I said, just automatically apply some focus time to my calendar. And Microsoft added, an hour here, an hour there, whatever. The bad thing about it was at a company I worked for at the time, people would say, oh, well, I needed 15 minutes, so I just grabbed some of your focus time. I'm like, wait a minute. That's not what it was there for. But the point was, I think it was an interesting experiment with Microsoft to say you need to schedule focus time. So with that in mind, I would encourage everybody to block time on their calendar that is their time to do hard things, to do the projects that they've been putting off, to do whatever it is. Just take that time and do it, because you will be so much more productive, and you will also not end the day with I didn't get that done. I didn't do that thing, So I think it's a great technique and highly valuable. Or did I ramble on that answer? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're doing awesome.
Yeah. I think the epiphany there for me, and I didn't intend to talk about a call center operation, but I think that's a really important thing, right? They schedule skilling time for their employees and their agents. Why aren't we doing that for ourselves, right? Why aren't we, when we look internally and we want to do something new or something different or something hard, why aren't we doing that for ourselves?
Why are we doing this for ourselves? Yeah, I think I need to block some time off to think, what do I need to start learning, because I've been in my comfort zone for way too long. And this is one other thing that I'm procrastinating about. It's comfort zones. And this is, I think, one of the things I've been facing when I think about all the time wasters I'm doing every day and doom scrolling, all of them. I think I just check all the lists you've mentioned today.
Yeah, we
and
all
it's
do.
comfort zone. And it's just because the routine of the day, that because it happens every day and I just do all of these time wasters every day.
Yep.
I'm too scared to change. But again, I need to break that habit, block some time off, and create a new habit, which is upskilling myself.
Exactly. I think it's hard, and we could do it another time, another session like this. But I just developed a course that is about identifying your hierarchy of values, right? And one of the reasons, just because I've been doing this habit and prioritization stuff with people for a couple of years now since the book came out, when I see people that fail at a habit or they fail at prioritization, it's because what I find most of the time is they're not grounding it back to something that's really important to them. And so now I've created this course and it's not public yet. It should be in a few weeks, but that I go through this exercise about what are the 5 most important things to you: family, spouse, children, whatever, fitness, whatever, money, whatever it could be. Let's start with that. So now you've got these things. Now rank them. What's the most important to the least important out of the 5? Then let's put why. why is it important to you? And so it could be, family, could be I have aging parents or whatever it may be. And then we associate an action with those values. And that's where people tend to fail. So what does it look like if you're going to practice that value on a daily basis? If family is important to you, what are you going to do? You're going to make time to share moments with that family. And that's the action, right? So that could be dinner. It could be a 15-minute phone call. It could be whatever. But and if you remind yourself every day that is a value that is important to me, then I'm going to make that time to share moments with my family, right? And it just changes the way you think about your schedule and your calendar, because you now, before something gets on there, you're talking about your comfort zone. If it's tied to a value, that comfort zone becomes less comfortable because now you're missing out on something that's really important to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much. I have a lot of thinking to do right now.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I'll share. I've got 5 values that I have statements that have actions. I'll share it with you sometime, and you can see how I think about it every morning. I've talked to you before about moderation, meditation, and movement are 3 very important elements of our lives. And that meditation, I could actually probably read them off to you right now, or just say them because I've read them. But I take the time. I've got it laminated, and I read it every morning. And it's just because I want that repetition of remembrance. So I work on what's valuable to me.
We need a full session on this.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll do it. All right. I think I'm done with all my questions. Do you have anything else you need to add to this episode?
No, not to this episode. I think we covered ground. I was hopefully it was on point. I didn't know if you wanted to ask about a specific habit or specific time waster, but I think we covered a lot. So hopefully it was good.
Yeah, mine is multitasking. I think I'm going to shut down the tabs down and protect my focus time this week. I'm gonna block some time for the things I need to do one at a time. And I'm taking a lot with this episode, to be honest. And we've talked about the hidden habits that waste your time, from doom scrolling to meetings with no posts, and more importantly, how to take control of your time again, because we're all just living our day without any control in our time. So that was actually very nice, Michael.
Well, good. Well, part of one of my values is to help people become more authentic in their efficiency. So maybe I live to my value today talking to you. I did. Can we mention again, Jonathan Hunt class next week? I think it's an important topic, especially in business. There's so many people that drinking is a culture, right? And I'm not here to say drinking is bad or good. That's not my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter in that regard. But there are people out there that want to moderate. And there are people out there that want to abstain. And then there are people that are just fine on their own. Jonathan's built a program that is about either building in moderation or abstinence based on what you need. And he's a fascinating guy. I heard him on a podcast years ago, and I just kind of networked with him, and we became, where we talk once or twice a year. So I think it's fascinating, and he'll talk about his story and he'll talk about his program. So if you've thought about moderation in drinking or abstinence, or just want to be curious about it, join us next week.
Tune in. We will tune in, definitely. That's it. Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be sharing all the things that we say we're going to share, whether it's the statements, the next episode that we're going to talk about, all in the comments. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comment, and tune in next week.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you for hosting. Talk to you next time.
Michael. Bye-bye.